Good. We're going live here. Thank you for listening to Bridges Live Presents. What are we missing? I'm talking with as everything just rolls on over into our live broadcast. I will continue to do this right here, right now, and just continue that. Just going on live on YouTube. It's going to record it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We had just a little bit of technical difficulties, but that's okay. We got this. My brother and I, Master Steven, we got this, and we're going to continue our conversation. But welcome to our conversation. Here's the kicker. You asked me how things are going. Things are struggling. And and the reason why I tell you why it's struggling is because I'm in certain meetings about racial education, our schools not being equity and equal. I'm in meetings about why police officers are still shooting black teens. I'm in meetings about white people asking, how can we make a difference? And I'm coming down to where I'm standing up. And I'm not shaking my fist, but I'm like, listen, this is what's going on. Until the system gets broken, busted up, and redone, the system will always win, because no matter what we do in it, it still runs on. We graduate one kid from 9th grade and he goes into a senior, we're losing 5 kids to the prison pipeline. You know what? So, It comes to a point where, why are we still asking the same flipping questions for 50 flipping years? Because it's not new. How about ask the question, why is it that we're still asking the same questions? Ask that question. Find that answer, Mr. Liberal white person. Let me hear you tell me that white people just don't want black people to be on the same level. I'll accept that, because we are already there. But you haven't said it out loud. You said it in my ear. You said it in the bathroom. You said it in a closed door behind a cigar and a scotch. But you haven't said it on TV and publicly. So until that happens, what are we still talking about? Stop asking the same bullshit question. So that's why I'm doing today, because I've been through literally 6 Zoom meetings today, roughly around exactly what I said, and it has everything to do with, why are we still asking the same flipping question when you haven't really accepted the answer? That we just don't want this to change. We not only we don't want this to change, we want to keep you in change. So go ahead.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Well, I think a lot of it. I think a lot of it is we want a car to fly like a plane, right? Racism is a part of the American fabric, and it has been since its inception, since the beginning of America. So we don't have any time, any experimental period of America that we could look at and say, well, let's be like that America. The fabric of America, racism is the fabric of America. So we're asking for America to do something that it cannot do, which is what I feel like creates the cognitive dissonance that we're dealing with. Right. Because right now, our main problem is cognitive dissonance, because if you think about it, we term ourselves now the African American, which means that if we were to say that we're under a system of oppression, that you're both the oppressor and the person being oppressed. You're both trying to, in a sycophantic way, trying to align ourselves and be accepted by the same thing that we're saying is oppressing us. And this is where the dissonance comes in. I think that our biggest problem is that the average black man thinks that we're in some type of a post-slavery situation, right? This isn't a post-slavery situation, because
we haven't left.
That's the thing. Yeah, we've never left, and I don't think most people understand this concept, which is that we are not the product of a failed slavery or people freed from slavery. We're the product of a successful slavery, right? Because the people that came over here prior to those who went through chattel slavery, those people had to be bound by they had to have metal around their neck, around their ankles, and shackles. And the reason for that is because they did not want to accept any English lifestyle, any English authority. They didn't want to assimilate to English society. So those are people pre-slavery. So how do you show a successful slavery? Well, you no longer have to keep the shackles or the chains on. You learn that with a pet. Just because the dog will walk beside you now and you don't have to put the leash on them, it's still a pet. And so I think we're dealing with this thing where we want to be accepted, right, as Englishmen into the same car that ran over our ancestors, right? They ran over our ancestors, left a bloody trail. The very same car, what we're asking now is for acceptance in that car. We want to drive the same car that drove over them. We want an opportunity to ride in the front seat. We want fairness in the very vehicle that was their destruction. So when we look back at the ancestors, there are two periods of ancestry that we look at, and usually we look at the post-chattel slavery ancestor and say, well, what those ancestors want, and are we living the dream for what they want? No, but we understand the trauma that we're dealing with that's still related to slavery. So those that just came out of slavery, they were dealing with even more trauma. Right. So the only place that we can look at the black man pre-trauma is before chattel slavery. And that black man was not looking for assimilation. So we are the manifestation of a successful slavery, as far as I'm concerned. And so we have to deal with that cognitively. First of all, be like, well, our problem is that we're attempting to be something, we're attempting to be accepted in a system of slavery fairly, and that just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense to us. So let me ask you, let me put you into the Buster Brown white shoes. I feel like I just went back to the 70s, my Buster Browns.
Yeah.
Why would a white person want you to accept what has happened that they are not willing to give? How does that work? How does that assimilate in their brain? It's got to be a functional mess to think that. Yeah. But here's the kicker: we just know recently, Whoopi Goldberg was put on whatever administrative leave for talking about the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. Now, any association with the Holocaust, it is so off limits that I might get called by the FCC just by mentioning the Holocaust with two black people. It's not even subject to discussion, right? At all, like zero. Mm-hmm. But we will discuss slavery like it's debatable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
Well, I think again, it's that we lack something that they have. Like you're quickly labeled in anti-Semitic, or the reason for this is because they have privatized power, right? We have this idea that they have privatized power, which is what I preach. Political freedom and all these things, it's a farce. There's no such thing as freedom. You're never going to experience any type of freedom, not in the English world. But what you can experience is privatized power. And though they have privatized power and leverage to be able to do things that we're not able to do. So we can't say what to and what not to do. We don't own the media, So these people are in power.
You're going to have to teach us, Master Flecher. My brother Steven, you guys hold on, time out, slow down, and kick it up a little bit. Get a goddamn piece of paper. Really. Now, what do you mean by privatized power? Because the man that's the backdrop behind me, the Frederick Douglass, most of you people who listen on the podcast can't see this. He said, there is no power as long as we remain slavery within ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So that's absolutely true. So when I say privatized power, I think it's first that we have to recognize that. Okay, we have to recognize first that the best that we can get here in America is to be accepted as English slaves fairly, right? Because the English people themselves, the European in America is a slave himself, and that's by dictionary definition. And this is what I always try to enforce in people's minds, to understand that a slave If we use Oxford languages, which is the authority in the English, in the English definition, a slave is a person who is the legal property of another and is forced to obey them. So you have to be legal property. So then we ask ourselves, well, what is property? And property is are possessions collectively. So we look at property as possessions collectively. And we look at what is possession. It's the state of having, owning, or controlling something. So possession is a thing under the state of control. All right. So if that is the case, then a slave, a person who is the legal property, it means that a person who's under the legal control of another and is forced. Force means coercion, right? We'll put you in prison. We'll take your money. We'll do all this is coercion. Who was forced to obey them. So by the English definition, the English mind itself sees its citizens, the subject citizen, as a slave. It's the exact same thing by definition. Right. So the only thing what we're asking is, can we please be recognized fairly as slaves? Can we please have equality in English slavery? That there's no escaping slavery. But what I said about privatized power is the fact that really what we see when we look at political powers, we want to see what they can do for us. When you look at privatized power, they want to see how they can manipulate the political structure.
That's so the right difference. Now, that's the split.
Yeah, that's the big difference.
Yep.
In Ohio, where I'm at right now, you have to. There's a code for how big the garden in your yard can be. I would have to go to Ohio and say, hey, listen, I want to dig a hole or build a swimming pool. Am I allowed to do that on my property? Right. I have to petition those things because I'm just a subject citizen. Right. But if we look at Elon Musk, who is privatized power, he can go hang Starlink, hang 1,000 satellites over top of your head and change what the constellational patterns look like. They're adding new forms of bacteria to the ocean that they claim eat plastics. Privatized power doesn't ask anything. They'll change the entire environment. And you can't even dig a hole in your yard. So what we're seeking as a people in this idea of freedom is a false hope. We should be seeking privatized power. You force things into your way of manipulation.
You're almost going into if most of you people don't do your reading and your education. Stokely Carmichael said this is what you call capitalism. We have never been a form. We've been associated with capitalism, but we've never been a part of capitalism. It's not like we can always gain what the Hugh Hefners have had in the world or the Elon Musk have had in the world. We can only think we can get there. So we've been associated with capitalism, but we can never be a part of it.
Yeah, well, it's true. We can't. And my thing is that honestly, we need to ask ourselves if we want to be a part of the American system of capitalism. We have to begin. If we're ever going to break through these mental chains that we have to stop validating everything that's created by either corporate or industrial or institutional America, because all of those things are created for our detriment. So we have to figure out, we have to rethink, see the world for ourselves and kind of rethink, because we're trying to live. If you think about it, like I tell people all the time, our attachment and the validation that we give to these systems, it comes from a misconception that we have, because I think that most Black people, we have this love for, or this pride in America, because we have the feeling that we were part of the creators of America. We feel like we helped to build America. Right. And the reason why a lot of people don't like this doesn't sit right with a lot of people, but it's the truth. We did not build America. We did not have any hand in the construction of America. America has two working definitions. Those two working definitions: America is a continental landmass. People do not build continental landmasses. So we didn't build America that way. We didn't help build America any other way, because the only other working definition is as the United States, which is a conceptual idea. Right. And Black people are not responsible for the conceptual idea of the United States of America. That is not none of the travesties that she's done, none of the things she's done. That's not our intellectual.
Well, hold on.
So we live in the mind of another people.
Steven, hold on a second. So you're saying that the cow is not part of the farm?
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that we built churches. We built churches. We've picked cotton. We've built buildings. We've helped to build economy. But none of those things are America. The only America that could be built is the only America that could be built is the America that exists in people's minds, because it is a concept, it is a conceptual place. It doesn't actually exist, right? Which is why we look at the map, we look at all the states. If we go through history, the states are always changing because they're states of an idea.
Right.
And so you have Englishmen who are dead or gone, who are slave owners, who dreamed this up without us. We didn't sit at the table.
Right.
I mean, you had what it was 25 of the 55 delegates of the Constitutional Convention own slaves. So how can my Constitution, if you think what a Constitution is, what constitutes you, how can my mental constitution be that of a slave owner or a barbarian who were stealing and kidnapping people? We're still cognitive, we're still moving underneath of their, you understand, their
thought process,
mental infrastructure.
So
this isn't ours.
This is why, and you're hitting on such a great point. This is why it is so difficult to be cognitive of the conception of something that you can never imagine. This is the dissonance Black people have with themselves. This is why education has been remiss. Not missed, remiss. It has never been started.
Exactly. And I mean, you know, it's one of those things. We have never demanded for the thing that is makes the most logical sense. We ask for things like, again, treat us fair, give us reparations.
Please
give us,
let us vote.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so funny to me. It's so funny to be like, when we talk about that, voting, right? I tell people, I'm very careful with that, because I tell people, listen, we ain't never going in the voting.
Wait a minute. I know what you held back. Hold on. I know what you held back, but I want you to say it, and I'll tell you why. Because what are we really voting for, and what are we voting on, and what is it allowed to do? And I think you were going to answer that by not saying so. So say it, and then go from there.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, man. I'm going to be honest. Our relationship with voting is silly, because how many times have we voted? We've voted Republican. We've voted historically Democrat. We've done all these, and it doesn't matter. Right now, we have the guy who wrote the '94 crime bill in office.
Right.
No matter what it is that we do, that doesn't matter. Second of all, I'm going to be honest with you. There were 18 million top secret sealed documents in 1 year in the United States of America. Okay, 18 million. You are silly. They treat us like we're children. You are silly if you think that you can make an intellectual decision about who will be the right president in a country that has 18 million different secrets that they keep from you. But you think that you can sit down and have a rational decision upon politicians who politicians we know are known for lying. They need to get into a political office. They say what's good for them to say. I can't trust Joe across the street. How in the world can I trust an institution with 18 million secrets? I'm not even privy to the information of what's going on in America.
Until you get into the club.
Yeah. The things that are happening behind closed doors, we're not privy to those. You're never going to be able to vote yourself. We're not going to be able to vote ourselves out of this situation, because again, we don't want to deal with this. But the fact of the matter is, we represent the success of slavery.
Right.
A group of people who begin to beckon and ask for you to accept them into a fair state of assimilation. That is, you have shown complete and total domination of those people. And then in our successes, the things that like I told you before, I remember sitting in church and I would hear the mothers stand up in the church and clap, and they would praise the Lord that little Johnny or such and such had got this great job at this corporation, or had gone to this school or that. So even the best of us, they select the minds and pull us into their own corporate world with their European corporate interests. And now you have rendered your child, right, the creativity of our own mind. We hand that over.
You actually hand over your own creation, and you call them the creator.
Well, it's crazy, because and this is what I say, if someone created your world, if you live in someone else's world, then they're your God. You see, you have the earth. You have the earth that the Most High Lord created, right? We have the earth, and then we have the world. The world is all conceptual realities
Right.
and things that
Right.
exist only because we agree in our mind. They have no real residence on the planet Earth. If the European mind, right, if the construct we live in completely is, yes, came from the European slaver's mind, exists still today, and you live inside of it, then who is the God of your world?
Right.
We don't even name anything for ourselves. We haven't named a state, a city, the ground under our feet. Whatever they say something is named, they said it's named that. So we call, even though you have the ability to call anything you want to. We don't even name things for ourselves. So the African mind is absent in the realm of imagination as far as his nationalism goes. Like we don't seem to understand that there's no such thing as a biological queen, right? You have people over there calling the queen, black people, Asian people, Hispanic people calling this lady the queen, but there are no biological human queens. We're not bees.
Right.
That means it's a conceptual queen.
Right.
So I have to now donate my imagination to crown you.
Yeah.
And we validate everything that they've ever done. And as long as we do that, you can never win in someone else's dream. It's impossible.
Is this let me ask you something, and you're hitting me right in my heart. You really are. And here's the thing. I'm not asking, is it difficult for people to understand? I'm asking, why is it difficult for people to hear it? Why is it difficult? Why is it difficult for people to actually hear what you're saying and then to now truly understand? Is it because they still have not imagined themselves not being a slave? They have to first realize that they're not being a slave for them to now accept the education we are kicking. But if they're still mentally a slave, this is very foreign and sounds very radical. Oh my God. And I can throw, you're a socialist, right? I can start throwing these demonized words at you that the Western world will do to people, will do to blacks, and say, call you a revolutionary, and then now you're underfoot.
Yeah, well, it's that we've always been rewarded for being comfortable Negroes, right? If they want to, people, they have more of an affinity for us when we're comfortable. And so I think that's what is happening. And also that I think we just have this misguided belief that we have some type of a historical connection to this idea of America that we don't have. And again, so it's hard to tell someone, all right, it's hard to tell. See, first of all, our idea of America the free, they're giving us this beautiful propaganda since we've been children. So we're chasing this dream, right? There are 92 other free countries in the world, for one. For two, I mean, we have a quarter of the Earth's prison population. How can the land of the free, lead the known universe? In people considered legally non-free. So we're actually the home of the non-free, if you were to consider it. But the propaganda is so strong with this, and we've had the dream and we've heard this over and over again. So we've created an America in our own minds, right? Because that's the only place that exists, anyways. It's a conceptual idea, and so each of us have our own conceptual idea of what that is. And black people, I believe, have some conceptual idea where there's some America down the road that hugs you, embraces you, says the dream is here and we love you. But that is not what the mechanism of America was built for. That's not what it's supposed to do. And it's not ever going to do it. And this is my problem. The biggest thing is that we think that we can put people in high places, and I see people that want to do good work. They want to be judges. Right. The police.
And
the problem with that.
It's still all good stuff.
Ahead,
it's still all good stuff.
It is.
But go ahead.
It is.
The problem is
that the judicial system, let's talk about that, is self-referential. And what I mean about self-referential is that it doesn't reference any system of morality. No. It references itself.
Right.
So what happens when you have a self-referential judicial system?
It would always correct itself.
Yeah, it can, exactly. And you could take like I know of many black men who have been locked up over, let's say, the selling of marijuana, right? and they were taken away. We have to really think about the gravity of what happened there. They're taken away from their homes, right? Stripped, thrown into cages, and kept there for years. For the state to turn around and say, when it got its back against the wall, it was going to sell marijuana.
Right.
So that shows us that there's nothing intrinsically evil or there's nothing intrinsically heinous about the action itself. And any civilized country or any civilized place would understand you do not subdue, kidnap, and put people in a cage for doing things that are not intrinsically heinous or not intrinsically evil.
Right.
So again, what are these men taken from their families and their communities for? Is for an infraction to the law itself, not because they need to be removed from the community for the safety of the community. So we're creating actions and punishments for the system and not the people. And so that's what happens. That's what happens when we're dealing with self-referential. It doesn't point to morality at all.
Because we know we've had these draconian terms with unequal fair treatment between who gets 17 years for pot for like a dime bag, and another person gets let go for time served before they even hit the court. And it has a lot to do with who you are, what you know, what color you are, and so on. And so we try to point this out as blacks, as black American, as educated black American. We keep trying to point this out, but we're pointing it to a person, to a system that knows it's doing it. So why are we still pointing it?
Exactly. Exactly, because
you broke up your Wi-Fi. You're breaking up a little bit.
Child slavery trauma. We have Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Now you're good. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I was saying it's because we're dealing with post-chattel slavery trauma, and because of that, we know psychologically we have Stockholm syndrome, and we've been killed and hanged. I mean, I don't care whether it was the black people that dressed up all nice with the hats and the suits in the 20s, or whether it was the black man walking down the street.
It was called the black bourgeois, the black black boule,
yeah. So regardless of how we dressed, how we act, how we prepared ourselves, we've always been at the end of the same type of abuse. And because of that, we become sycophantic. And so we wanting to be accepted as, again, it is English society that has done this to us. And it is English society that we're beckoning to allow us into English society fairly. And so that's what we're dealing with. And so we're not dealing with people that are in their right state of mind. And this is why I always say, if we want to know anything about liberty or freedom, we have to sit back and think, what did the African think before he was put in a chains, before he could walk around without the chains on, domestically trained and trying to, assimilate? What was he thinking? Because to him, freedom was a completely different thing than it is to us now. If you were to look at the pre-slavery African, and then I go to him and tell him, well, hey man, I'm a son of Amerigo. I'm an American, Amerigo Vespucci. We're trying to, I've joined the people that was his enemy. I have seek to join and assimilate with his demise. And so we're a new type of thing with a new type of psychology, and we can't get a grounding because we're not sure exactly what it is that we want to be, because we want to be two different things. You see, I think that's our biggest issue, is that we know we'll never be accepted this way, and that the fabric of America is racism, but yet we still want to. I look at what Malcolm said. Malcolm said the house Negro, he'll run and put the flames of the fire out on the master's house before the master will.
Yes.
We are still in the same house. And as long as the house exists and the executive order is the same and there is no reconstruction from the ground up, as long as we still are living underneath those 25 delegate slave owners' words, we will always be cursed because the words are a curse. We live in a land that was created by or manifested by the curse of slavers.
So I think when people hear this and get maybe overwhelmed, what is next? What could be next? You know, some people say we should leave this land. To go where? To go where?
Nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go. And that's the thing. We have to face it in whatever fashion we have to face it, because there's nowhere to, they took every blade of land the black people ever had, save Ethiopia, everywhere on the globe, every indigenous place, and they crippled their economies. There's nowhere to go.
Purposely.
Yeah, purposely. There's nowhere to go. But the one thing that I do know is that we have to distinguish our own psychology from that of the English psychology. Yeah. We cannot carry the psychology and the cultural tendencies of the same people that want to destroy us. We can't aspire to be a part of their organizations. We have to stop, to me personally, we have to stop looking at it as a success to be absorbed by their institutions. As long as that happens, we'll never create institutions of ourselves, because we can't wait to go and run into their institutions in which we're now a mitigated force. So I think that we have to.
They have mined our abilities like they have mined our lands. Mm-hmm. We are still being mined for our minerals and services from Africa, and now they have mined our physical ability. They have mined our mental capacity. They have mined our cells. They have mined our tissues. They are drilling in us from the beginning we got here, because the resources that we have had within us, they have used for themselves. They have made so much skin products from our skin that makes their skin beautiful, and we've got nothing, right? We're not even talking about the red blood cells they got from Henrietta Lacks. We're talking way past that. We're talking today. The beauty products are made from our skin cells. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing. It is amazing. I mean, that's the thing. All this happened to us up to this point is like, I don't understand how we have this relationship where we feel like we can trust. If we just vote this next guy in, if we just do this, it's that kind of thing, man. We have to take counsel with ourselves and make decisions upon what the Black agenda is, because we will never share an agenda with the American powers that be. And so we have to create some type of systematic counsel with ourselves and figure out how to use our energy, which is, I don't know if we need city to city that has to, the correspondence between each city, but we have to create counsel. That's why they always have a foot up on us, because they have counsel behind closed doors. They have counsel in front of us. They're constantly in counsel with each other. And we think that we can get our agendas on the table. You'll never get your agenda on the table. It'll be abortion on the table, gay rights on the table. It'll be the same thing forever. And so, yeah, I think that we have to stop.
Look how crazy it is. And I don't want to, and when I speak, people, you got to realize this is not about disparity against anyone else. But when the Asians were getting hit because of the flu, because of this COVID, they passed a bill so fast against hurting Asians, it was incredible. I mean, it was like in a week. They were like, bill passed, don't hurt Asians or it's a hate crime. Every time a black person gets killed or something, they're like, is it really? You sure? Maybe it was a crime. They always got to have like, well, I'm not sure if it was against them.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it is. And again, it goes right back to privatized power, because in leverage. You can't just do whatever you want to Asian Americas, because there is a source of Asian power, that they don't want to deal with. What our situation is that we're in an abusive relationship with someone who doesn't respect us. They don't respect what counsel do we have with anyone else in the world, and what are we going to do? And so I think it's just that kind of thing, man. No one is going to respect you because you beg them to, because you march, because you cry, because it's never going to happen. Which is the same thing. It's a hard thing to talk about, because one of the things you have to understand, you know why they'll never run into Chinatown? Right? If you go, there's a Chinatown in every major city.
Yes, there is.
And they're not going to run in there shooting, killing, and beating their children.
Not happening.
There's a couple. Yeah, it's not going to happen. And they don't need an Asian president or these Asian congressmen. They don't need that. Well, I'll tell you why. One reason is that if you go, you have things like, whether it's the Italians, whether it's they have the Yakuza.
Yeah.
You have, whether it's in Mexico, whether you look at the Italians, there is the mafia. There are things set in place to where law enforcement and the judicial system doesn't feel comfortable bringing misjustice into their area, because guess what? There are people behind the scenes that deal with it instead of crime. And because that's happened historically, we don't deal with those type of people like that. Well, we don't have that type of what would I say? Systematic force or underbelly that deals. When Trayvon Martin or any of these children were harmed, they don't fear when they go home.
No,
their families have no fear
about.
You can't do that. You can't do that in Chinatown. Right. You can't do that to other people. There will be a fear for your own life. They have no fear for their own life when they harm us, and that's something that goes. It's primal. It's primal.
Wow.
And again, I think this comes with a domesticated group of people. Like, even if you take a
so
fox,
we are a domesticated animal.
Yeah, we're domesticated. If you take a fox and you take them, after a couple generations, a fox will start to look like a puppy. They actually did this as an experiment, I believe, in Switzerland. The fox will become a more juvenile, playful, it'll even look different version of itself, just juvenile and playful. Well, the reason is because you've now domesticated it. So it now cowers when it sees, genetically. Mm-hmm. This is now in its cellular memory, that when it sees, look at the gangsters. They'll look right what's going on in Chicago, right? You have guys that go out and they'll shoot at each other. Now they're running around with choppers, semi-automatic weapons, all these things, right?
In the black neighborhoods.
They will shoot in the black neighborhoods. They will shoot it out with each other. But when the police come with a state-issued weapon, think about the psychology behind that. The police shows up with a state-issued weapon, and they show up and they all lay down all the guns. They run and they disperse. You go to prison, they'll cut each other up, they'll do all this stuff. But when it could be a lady, the CO walks in, says, "Get on your bunk, everybody lay down." They do it.
Yeah.
And so this is in us since slavery, a cellular memory. When we see a uniformed white face, we humble ourselves. Like we don't humble ourselves amongst ourselves or with ourselves. And people will say, well, we have to do that or we're going to get killed. You want to preach a message of violence or anything like that. But what we're saying then is we must stay domesticated. That's the safest way to be. And any domesticated animal will never receive respect because you are a domesticated animal. And again, I hate to even use us, even try to reach for an analogy like an animal when talking about us after being placed, called 2/3 of an animal. But this is the way that they look at us. Right? You can take the chain off of them now.
I talk about a lot of cellular development, cellular, emotional, and how it is. There's so much fabric of trauma that has to be cleaned cellularly from genetic structure that we've been adhering to for hundreds of years. For us to eradicate that structure, we have to dig within ourselves. And that's something that, again, without the drugs, the alcohol, the smoking, the gambling, the pornographic, all that stuff, we're so enamored with that they got us on the hook of staying domesticated.
I think it's a comfort thing, man. As long as I can go home as a black man and sit on my couch.
I made it for a day. Like I made it for a day.
Right.
I made it for a day.
It's this. And so we're just surviving. We're just surviving, because for us, it feels like the most responsible, safest thing to do is just to continue surviving. And this is all we're trying to do. And again, other people we have people, they're putting rovers on Mars and trying to go into the moon, and what are we doing? Just trying to
make
survive.
Make it home.
Yeah. Just trying to make it home. And so, again, the first thing I think we have to do is we have to get rid of the cognitive dissonance. We have to say, what are we and who are we? We have to deal with that, because there is a turn. Again, pre-slavery, there's a turn in the black man. You have the post-slavery black man and the pre-slavery black man. Do we want what the pre-slavery black man wanted, or do we want what the post-slavery black man wanted after he has collected all of his trauma, which is just a fair vote, a fair seat, or do we want liberty? That's a question we have to ask. And I feel like the search for liberty has died inside of us. We no longer want liberty,
I don't even know. It's like when you talk to a young person, who do you know what a good home looks like? Who's a home that has been riddled with sexual abuse, alcoholism, argues and fights, and violent explosions. What does a good home look like to this person, right? And you say, well, I can take you to a good home. Those words mean absolutely nothing. And that's the word you're using. What does liberty look like to an enslaved mental black man when they don't know how to get mental help? They don't know how to ask for help. They very fewly know how to join together to unify, because we have a distrust, not a mistrust, a distrust, right? For each other. Like, how many times have we go into a black store and be like, they ripped me off, I ain't going back there? How many times have you been to those other stores, they rip you off, you just go to another one, right? Because they're having a sale, right? So how can a person know what liberty is if they've never even know what liberty could be?
Yeah, and I think that's the conundrum. That's what we're dealing with. I don't think people know what liberty is. I don't think we know what freedom is. I don't think we know what slavery is. We know a lot of the times we only know spectrum points of these things, right? Like we'll say, well, I'm not a slave because I'm not getting whipped in a field. Well, that's not slavery, as if it's different from yours. That is a spectrum. There's a spectrum of slavery, and that's only one place on the polarity of slavery. And so it's the same thing with freedom. Like, when we say freedom, what is it that you mean? Because to be free, like we talked about what a slave means, that means to be outside of the controlling force. Yeah, outside of the controlling force. Now, some people say, well, that's almost impossible. Can we live outside of a controlling force?
Absolutely.
Well, what's important for the black man, especially is the controlling force, is your controlling force the same controlling force that was the controlling force of your ancestors? And if it's the same controlling force, then you are enslaved to the same system that your ancestors were enslaved to. You've been given certain different rights or privileges, but the situation has not changed. So I think the first we have to make the admission to ourselves that we have not escaped slavery. And you must first realize where you're at. We have to set the GPS on where we actually stand.
Yeah, like right now, not before, like right now. Right.
Yeah, we have to deal with the gravity of our situation. And so I think we have further to go than we realize right now, because I don't think that we've dealt with what's actually literally happening. I think that the most of us feel like we're free. And even though we know there's a sense of oppression, we don't know what freedom means. See, first of all, you have to realize how important it is for people to live in a nation when none of the laws, none of the constitutional values of that nation came from a black mind. It didn't come from a black mind. Your imagination, your all of our idiosyncrasies as a people, none of that exists in what America is. None of it at all. So in fact, when we look at things like that, we're going to say, well, why can't we get our placement? Why can't we see it? How can you get placement in someone else's imagination?
Right.
You can't. It's not your intellectual property. The system will never work the way you want it to work because you had no hand in the creation of the system. So the gears are going to continue to do what it is. It doesn't matter if I become a judge tomorrow. If I become a judge, see, this is what I say about self-referential systems. I actually said this in my book, Thousand-Legged Unicorn, on page 45. I say self-referentiality replaces the responsibility of doing what's right with the responsibility to do what is written. And so a judge will have to go in there, and she has a code that was written that they have to adhere to. Yeah. They have to adhere to it. The cop, the CO, at a certain point they have to say, I know, man, it's not right, but it's my job.
Right.
So you have a responsibility to do what is written by the European hand, right? You have a responsibility to do what is written over the responsibility to do what is right. And this is as long as we're in the self-referential system of the Englishman, it will always happen to us like this. And so I think it's a hard conversation because where do we go from this?
It's not a hard conversation because people have to understand this, because I think people are so quick to say, so now what are we supposed to do? Well, first slow down. Understand where you are. You are, not where we are. You are. You are as an individual person. Don't just say because some black people get treated unfairly or mistreated harshly that it's all of us. It is all of us, and it is part of us. But where are you in that treatment? How are you affecting that treatment? How are you devising that treatment? Because you're right, you're still part of that treatment. But is it really being treated for you or against you? And you don't know who you are, so you don't know where you stand, but you're ready to lob into the mob rules and roll with it, and you still nothing but just because you're rolling with us doesn't mean you associate with us, doesn't mean you understand us. And you can still be the black person that says, that's right, we got to go do this, we got to go do this. What are you doing, and how are you understanding it? That's what they're missing.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And a lot of people, they're just linking on to a movement or whatever looks or feels good. And again, it's all about trajectory. At a certain point to say, well, what is the trajectory? What is it that we want? That for those that don't know how to understand or how to follow or how to participate, right? They've been told what they want by America through propaganda, the piece of American pie. Someone amongst ourselves, we have to rewrite what the dream is for ourselves so that they can latch on to a new dream. Because right now they're chasing a dream that doesn't exist and will never exist and has never existed. So we have to say, well, how do we protect ourselves, for one? Right. What is it that we want? What is it that we demand?
Because we're feeling unsafe. That's really what it is. And if we're feeling unsafe, the harshest term is that we're afraid.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's because there's a harsh reality. And the harsh reality is that if you ever want the same type of liberty, the same types of freedom, the same type of respect that any of the rest of these people have on the planet Earth, you have to be willing to die for that. And it's hard. You can't get around it. We want to find a way around that. We want to find a way that it'll be okay, that we can be comfortable, right? We can be comfortable Negroes and happy and not do anything. People were spit on, kicked, beat, killed, hung, and we have not escaped the responsibility to be kicked, beat on, hung, and killed. That is your responsibility when it's in the way of your liberty or your freedom. You see, and I feel like, again, it goes back to domestication. The further you get away from chattel slavery, the further you get away from it, the more of a domesticated a black man you see with this need to assimilate, this need to be appreciated, this need to be accepted, this need. You don't see the Nat Turners anymore. No. You don't see the. You see that the further we get away from it, the more accustomed we come to thinking like the people we claim oppress us.
I wrote a paper called Free Range Slaves. Just because you don't see the fence doesn't mean you're not encaged. Just because you don't see the change doesn't mean you're not adhered to a post. You know, and just because you don't see the marks on your back or your arm or your leg doesn't mean you ain't getting whipped. And I think that's where the free range slave comes in. You know, it would be almost obvious if we were just getting whipped by the school system. If we were getting whipped physically, they would be like, look, this is what I'm feeling. I'm in pain. But right now, the pain's so much up in here that we keep the system keeps saying you're imagining your pain. You know, it's not your pain. You're just you're just over exaggerating, right? You just need to work harder.
Pull your bootstraps. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, man. Yeah, that's what they like to say. And hey, you know, again, it's because that's one of the bad things, because we look back at, you know, the most terrible forms of slavery, and that whip was a terrible thing. But that whip was a reminder, right? You were getting lashed. You knew, right, how serious the situation was. Well, now when you got your Netflix and we're dealing with economic oppression.
Right.
But they give you just enough to sedate yourself and keep making it through while they use you as a resource, right? And so now it's like sometimes bad things are good for us. This is why I said Donald Trump was good.
He was the best.
This is why I said it was a good thing for us. And I'll tell you why. Because we needed a wake-up call, all right? Sometimes it's good for I've figured this out with us, man. If you come out and tell us you don't like us, we don't like that too much. That'll wake us up. When you get somebody like the guy who wrote the 94 crime bill, right? He comes up, he's slick as a snake. He comes from an era and from a group of people who are slick supremacists. They're slick racists. They come from the systemic movement of racism that they're able to do this through paperwork, right? And then we get one dummy that comes in and calls you every name out of the book, and we get angry at him and don't realize we'd be better off dealing with a dummy than the slickest serpent we've been dealing with for this long.
Malcolm X said the worst person you can have is a white liberal talking about, I understand your black pain. Yeah, okay.
They've been able to get us. Yeah, they've been able to get us with that one for a long time, and they come in and they apologize. Now he's running. I'm sorry about what I did. The Clinton administration apologized, and we are the most accepting, forgiving people in the world.
Except for each other. Except for each other. We don't forgive each other. We will denounce each other. We will kick each other out of the house. We will arrest each other. We will point fingers at each other. But the others, oh yeah, we'll accept their apology.
Yeah, we've always, you know, it goes back to the whole house field thing, man. And I see how black people walk by other black people, and then they walk by a white person. It's an entirely different demeanor. But like I said, it's biological. You know, you can't take a people for hundreds of years,
right,
and do this kind of thing to them and think that there won't be some type of biological effect. And you know, like we see in any other circumstance, people who are held captive by their abusers for long periods of time usually end up trying to appease and trying to mimic that oppressor.
My friend, Master Flecher, Steven, thank you so much for coming on. There's so much more to talk to, but there's so much. It's not just talk to or talk at. It's educate with. And I'll say that slower for people. We're not talking to or talking at, but educate with. What does educate with means? It means I am giving, and you are giving, and you're receiving, and I am receiving. That is talk. That is educate with. I'm not trying to educate you so you do nothing, because if you do nothing, that isn't education. That's again being trained. I don't want to train you. I am not trying to train you into mimicking me or mimicking you. We're trying to educate with. I mean, you have to come to terms of asking, maybe there's some things you didn't understand. And if there's something you didn't understand, how can they reach out to you so they can ask and say, could you explain that again, my brother? So how can people reach you?
Okay, people, you can reach me. You can reach me through email mostly, which is Freeman Flecher at yahoo.com. I constantly check that, so if anyone wants to reach out to me, that's the best way to do so. Freeman Flecher at yahoo.com. I'm getting a lot more active in social media now, so I'll have a better answer for you that next time we talk. But yeah, through email.
Not that it matters, because it's funny that black people really don't use social medias to contact each other.
Yeah, true.
They just don't.
True.
Not unless we meet up, let's meet up. I mean, that's how we meet. We have to meet in space. This virtual social media, that's not us meeting.
Yeah, we definitely have to take counsel with each other in the real world. We need to start doing that systematically. And, we need to organize that. And we have to do that separate from religion, because we often try to pair things with religion. It tears us apart. We have to create a political situation where we sit down with one another, state to state, city to city. And that's not too much for us to do. I just think we need to realize that we need to do it and get the right people at the forefront of getting that going. But man, like I said, man, I definitely appreciate you letting me come on, and chop it up with you. So
I love it. I love it. It warms my heart, man. And there's other brothers out here that we can just get together around the fire and just talk and really, again, educate with and have us do the things that we know we can do. I wish all you people good luck, good blessings. Stay compassionate, stay kind. And thank you for visiting with me, Dr. Paul Dyer and Master Lewis Flecher. You guys have a great evening. Kind. And thank you for visiting with me, Dr. Paul Dyer and Master Lewis.
But when it could be a lady, the CEO walks in, says, "Get on your bunk, everybody lay down." They do.